Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and today let's take a quick look at a couple of sub $100 planners that are on the market. I mean, sub $100 is cutting it close, but these are basically, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, planar driver IMs kind of took over the market, but most of them were priced around 150, 200, 250 bucks. But now they're coming down in price. And here what we've got on the table are Letshuoer S08 coming in at $99.99, so basically 100 bucks. And then over here we've got the Tin Hifi, let's be adults about this, the Tin Hifi Dudu. And this one's actually just 80 bucks. 80 bucks. They're both using 13mm dynamic drivers. My suspicion is they're using the same driver, but there are some pretty significant differences between them, both in terms of physical form factor as well as tuning. So let's talk about that. And let's start by talking about the physical form factor of the Dudu. So yeah, I think frankly this IM looks pretty stinking bland. Like it looks like a prototype, but it's a retail IM. It's got the Tin Hifi logo on the outside and a lot of gray. Other than that, the shell is a little bit on the large side, which is kind of standard for these dynamic, or sorry, not dynamic driver, these planar driver IMs. A lot of them have kind of chonky shells. And this one is kind of in line with expectations. You can see the nozzle in there is not especially long, but also the shape of this shell is not especially shaped for an ear. Like it's a decent fitting IM. I'll give you a fit demonstration in a little bit, but it's not its strong suit, I suppose. The other thing about this IM that is not its strong suit is this cable, which is, I guess it's a fine cable. It's just really thin and lightweight. You can see that the behavior on it is pretty nice. It's nice and soft and pliable. It's not stiff or anything like that, but it's just really thin. And I guess this is how Tin Hifi got the Dudu down to just 80 bucks is, well, it's just not packing a lot in terms of physical form factor. It does have a chin slider, which mostly stays in place, but it is what it is. And then you've got your standard 2-pin connectors up here. You can swap this with another cable if you'd like to, but there you go, the Tin Hifi Dudu. On the other hand, we've got Letshuoer S08, and I think this one is actually a really quite nice build, and it's 20 bucks more, so maybe you're paying for it there. Frankly, just in terms of build quality, I think it's worth it. So let me wrap this guy up real quick and show you why. I mean, aesthetically, I think the S08 is actually a really cool looking IM. If not, this might possibly be the best looking planar IM I can think of. Is there anything better looking? I don't think so. It's just a really handsome look, nice and simple, but also well-defined and unique. It also comes on a cable that frankly is really quite nice. Letshuoer typically does really nice cables, and this one is no exception. It's just got nice soft behavior to it. It also has swappable terminations. I believe it comes with a 4.4mm termination in the box, and you just unscrew that, pop this off, pop on the 4.4, and now you've got a balanced connector and a balanced IM, if that's important to you. Personally, I think balance is a little bit of a meme, but I don't have to complain about it because I've got both 3.5 and balanced in the same package, and you don't really pay for it. You can look in terms of jack size, these are just about the same size, even though this one is swappable and modular like that. So I dig that. You do also get a chin slider on the Letshuoer cable. This one actually stays in place much better. Of course, you've got your preformed ear hooks. And one thing that is notable about this cable is that while it is your standard, pull that off, 2-pin connector, the 2-pin connectors that are stock on this do have a little bit of a, not quite a right angle, but they are angled a little bit, which helps with the fit of this particular IM. But it also means that if you get another cable that probably is not going to have that exact angle to it, it might fit a little bit different. But that is a fairly small point because for the most part, once you put this thing in your ear, you're not going to notice. And I guess while I'm talking about that, let me put these things in my ear. So I'll start with the Tin Hifi Dudu. That's right. Show you that in my ear. I actually had some issues with this thing sealing using the stock tips. I'll be honest, I didn't roll tips on this thing too much or at all to play around with it, but it is, again, kind of a chonky size, and because the shape of it is not particularly well tuned to my ear, I would recommend using a longer ear tip than what you get with this thing on stock. Think of something like a spin fit tip has got a little bit of a little extra length on the nozzle, or something like the Asla ear tips. It's going to give you that little bit of extra length that I think is going to give a more consistent seal. With these stock tips, frankly, I had to refit these things a number of times to make sure I was getting a solid seal on them. But once they're in there, you can see that size-wise, it's a little bit on the, I would say a medium-large fit, but it doesn't feel large in my ear at all. In fact, I would say this is fairly comfortable, and it also fits actually a little bit flush. So if you're looking for something you can lie down on, I guess that is a plus side of this IM. But let me go over instead to the Letshuoer and show you this in my ear, because I like this one better. Fit-wise, it fits a little bit smaller. I would say this is squarely medium, and you can see that it's tucking in behind this part of my ear, which means that the fit stability on it is a little bit better. It's a more secure. That said, it's still not going to be as secure as something like a custom molded or a semi-custom molded resin fit, but for a metal shell, this one actually fits in there pretty well. One thing I will say is that the front end of this IM, let's see if I can pull it up, side profile here, the front end of it is a little bit bulkier than you might expect. And what that does is it basically means that this sits out a little bit forward of the back of it. The back of it can press right up against my concha bowl, whereas this one kind of sticks out a little bit. But generally, fit stability is quite nice. And here I mentioned that ear hook really does hug my ear quite well and hold it in place. So yeah, I would say neither of these IMs are especially good fitting IMs. But they're fine fitting IMs. Certainly no issues with comfort, no sharp edges or anything like that. Just that this Dudu is kind of plain looking, both in cable and IM. But let me go ahead and wrap this thing up. We'll move on to talking about the sound, I promise. And I think I'm going to start with, let's see, let's stick with the Dudu. All right, let's stick with starting with the Dudu, and then we'll move over to the S08. Let me set up over here real quick. In fact, let me move these things out the way. Pull up the frequency response. So this is actually the S08. Please hold for a second while I pull up the frequency response graph of the Dudu. And if you want to check this out for yourself, I've got it linked on squig.link, link in the description down below. But yeah, this is what you should expect from the frequency response of this IM, which is to say it's kind of a generic V-shaped sound signature. It's got, you know, some significant bass boost to it, a little bit thin on the mid-range, and kind of forward here in the upper mids, and then very pronounced upper treble, which is the thing that you get with the planar IMs. A lot of, especially sub $100 dynamic driver and even hybrid IMs, you don't get a whole lot of what we'll call treble extension, right? You don't get a lot of that upper treble presence, but with the planars, that is the thing we get, and that is what contributes to kind of like this technical sound that people associate with planars. So that much is good. Whereas if we go over here to the Letshuoer S08 instead, you see that we get a pretty different frequency response. In fact, let me briefly overlay them on top of each other so you can see big differences here in the upper mids as well as in the bass definition a little bit, but let me focus on the S08. So this is going to be a much warmer, bassier tune, just kind of more laid back, thicker sounding, and less contrasty. Right? You can see up here, while it does still have pretty good treble extension, it's not nearly as pronounced, especially in this lower treble, upper mid-range region. And because of that, it doesn't have as much contrast, doesn't have as much of that sharp V-shaped sound signature. Now, what does that mean for actual listening impressions? Let me pull these things back on the table while I pull up my notes. The Dudu, I would say is, hold on, let me pull up, where are my notes? All right. This is definitely the brighter, more V-shaped sound signature. It's going to be a little bit more forward in the vocal region and kind of better delineation between sounds, whereas the S08 is going to be, again, that kind of warmer, denser sound, less delineation between sounds. I think that the vocals on the Dudu come across kind of thin and glary, like the tuning up there is a little bit on the much side, I suppose. There's more clarity, I suppose, and it does do a little bit better with busy tracks. So I'm thinking like even Cigarettes After Sex can be a little bit thick on the S08, whereas you get a little bit better contrast here. But more I'm thinking like the Cure's Disintegration album. There's just a lot of instruments playing at the same time. And with the tuning that we have here on the Dudu, you get more sense of clarity, more sense of separation between that. But you just get, I think, a more unnatural tonality with the way that it is executed on this guy. Yeah, I have any notes? No, it's not much other notes. Here with the S08, again, you get a thicker, bassier, warmer sound that does, I think, a worse job in terms of separation of sounds, but it does a better job, I think, in terms of sounding more normal. All right. The bass kind of sucks on this, to be honest. It's poofy, it's smeary, and because of that, it's, I think, worse with busy tracks. Again, the Cure's Disintegration album is just kind of sounds one note thick, and it's hard to pick out the distinction between sounds and the positioning and stuff like that. I also found the S08 maybe a little bit on the sibilant side, but I did find that the upper mid-range vocals and stuff, while they weren't perfectly tuned, they sounded more natural. There wasn't any weird like glariness to them. And I think that the upper treble on this guy is just a little bit more natural and actually plays well with high frequency percussion. Think hi-hats, drum brushes, cymbals and stuff like that. Like, it sounds metallic and realistic in a way that, again, a lot of budget stuff doesn't really do that well. The Tin Hifi, it does an okay job with that stuff. Again, it's got that upper treble presence to do that, but I think just because of the tuning, it comes across a little bit thinner, a little bit splashier versus the S08, which is just a little bit more reserved. So I don't know. I don't got a whole lot more to say about these IMs. The Tin Hifi Dudu, out of 5 stars, I don't know. I could maybe argue that should be a 2-star. You can maybe argue this is a 3-star because it's kind of fine, but it's also kind of just like a not very good looking IM. And there's not really much about the sound that I like. Again, a little bit glary in the vocals, a little bit unnatural. Whereas the S08, spoiler there, I'm going to give this one 3 stars. You know, it's not that much better than the Tin Hifi Dudu, but I think aesthetically it looks much nicer, and that plays a big role in my book. And I think in terms of sound signatures, it's just a better executed version of this. It is warmer, the bassier sound, which is not necessarily the direction I personally prefer, but if you know you like that, this is not a bad execution of that. Again, it's just a little bit thick and poofy in the bass. You can definitely find better bass out there. In fact, did I leave notes for myself on which bass? No, I didn't leave. Here's my recommendation. Do I have it around here? I do. Check this guy out. This is the Audiophile Explorer. You want a bassy, it's not a planar. So if you need to have a planar, well, here you go. The S08, it's the better one of the 2 that I've got here on the table. But I guess that's gonna do it. If you wanna check out either of these IMs, I've got them linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, and I'll catch you on the next super review. But quickly shout out, because I forgot to mention, shout out to Letshuoer for sending this guy in for review, and shout out to Shenzhen Audio for sending in the Dudu. The Dudu. We got through it there, folks. Have a good one.
Join with the force of reviews. We now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's begin with the